and this is the Digital Savage Experience podcast. Today, I have with me Dr. Jorge Valdes. As a young man in his 20s with an insatiable thirst for money and power, Dr. Valdes was a founding member of a group that became known as Colombia's Medellín Drug Cartel. And he has a very interesting story how he kind of pivoted and changed his life around and some of the key learnings he took from that. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Roman, for having me on your show. It's a pleasure.
My pleasure. Go on.
It's very interesting because one of the things that's unique about my story is that we think in this world that bad things only happen to bad kids, and then combined with the fact that you believe that once you're down or once you've done something horrific in life, that's it. That's going to define you for the rest of your life. And I'm the perfect example that both of them don't necessarily have to be true. I came from Cuba, an immigrant, like yourself. You know how it is, the immigrant experience. I came early in the 60s in Miami where it was pretty rough growing up. And, my parents were very wealthy in Cuba, came to the United States with nothing, just the clothes on our back, escaping communism. And my mother was very, very religious. She wanted her children to grow up in a country where they could worship God. My father, typical Catholic, he'd take us to church and he'd say he would pray, but never saw it, or very distant. I try to explain to my kids back in the 50s, I don't think I ever, by the time I was 9, I ever said 5 words to father. But yet I know he loved me, but at that time where kids are meant to be seen and not to be heard. So we grew up morals, but what happened is at the airport, as we're about to leave, I was 10, my brother was 9 and my sister was 5. They come and they said that my mother can come. And now my mother was the center of our home. That was, everything that we did was around my mom. And my dad, of course, he didn't want to leave. He didn't think that Castro was going to have any impact on his life. Very wealthy man. He was 40, didn't speak the language. So he's like, I'm not going. And I remember my mother coming and grabbing my hand and saying, son, take your brother and sister to Miami. I'll see you one day. Well, my world just shattered. I mean, literally, it was, had no idea what was going on. First of all, I had no idea why we were leaving Cuba. They didn't tell us anything. And then all of a sudden, my mother, who was the center of our house, is not leaving. My father didn't want to come, and I'm walking towards that tarmac in a daze. And I remember telling to myself, I created a mindset. And I created this belief that, my mother's crazy. There is no God, If there's ever going to be a God, it's going to be who I make him to be. We came to Miami. 11 was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. We had to write down what time we had to pee because everyone had to go to school or work. But I grew up with my father did come with us, and I grew up with tremendous morals and very hardworking. I remember we had no food, literally, to drink. In the morning, all we would get is 2 raw eggs and this powder Vietnam milk that never mixed. And I remember finding out that a friend of mine had lunch. We didn't have lunch. All we did is add that some milk and drink milk till this day with the 2 eggs till nighttime. And telling my father, hey, Dad, I found out a friend of mine came from Cuba 6 months before us. He takes lunch. And my father, he didn't say much. He said yes. And I'm like, well, he said he gets food stamps. And my dad just nods his head and he says, I said, you know about food stamps? He said, yes. And I said, well, why don't we get food stamps? And he's like, because that's for poor people. And I'm like, damn, we haven't even gotten to poor yet, man. We're like so underneath the ground that we haven't even surfaced for poverty. And he said, son, food stamps are for people that really need it, but anyone that takes help from the government stays poor all their life. And then I never forget till today, and that was 54 years ago, he put his finger on my chest. I was 70 pounds soaking wet. He said, you get up early in the morning and you figure out how you're going to help feed your family. And that's all I did. I worked since I was 10 years old. At the age of 17, I was an honor student in school. Never did drugs, never did all the alcohol I drank in my life before I was 21 fit in a teacup. Never did anything. I worked full-time I was the youngest employee at the age of 17 for the Federal Reserve Bank, and went to University of Miami full-time. And that's all I did for 4 years. I worked and I studied, worked and studied all day long. Had no social life. At the age of 20, my accounting professor says to me, he had moved from Michigan, didn't speak Spanish. Said, George, if you're doing Spanish clients, I'll give you a secretary office, all the things to start your own practice. And that was my dream because I was set. I had to go. I was laser focused. I was going to graduate at the age of 20, go to law school, get out of law school by the age of 23, and I'm going to be a millionaire by the age of 30. That's all that mattered to me. See, I bought into this belief of the American dream that we think today that is really not real. The one that if you have a lot of money, you have a lot of cars, mansion and women, you're going to be happy. You'll be somebody. And that's what I wanted to do all my life. So I worked really, really hard. And then I remember the first time that he gave me was just a little grocery store. I mean, in Little Havana. And I went there the first Monday, and this is 1976. I'm 20 years old. And I see this bag with $100,000. And I'm like, my God, I didn't even know that much money existed in the world. I didn't say nothing. I went about doing my books, but I'm like, as an accountant, well, it doesn't make sense. How can this little shop produce so much? Next week I come, 75,000. The third week comes, and I see another 100,000. I had enough. I'm like, I got to find out what's going on. I called the owner and I said, can you explain to me, what is happening? Because let me explain something real basic about accounting. If you buy that can of soup there that I've seen every day that I've come here, it's still dusty, you never sold it. But if you buy that can of soup for $1 and you sell it for $3, that means $2 profit. In the last week, I recorded over $300,000. That must have meant you must have bought over $100,000. But all I've seen is about $1,400 worth of purchases. And I mean, literally, they just laughed in my face and they're like, George, we're drug dealers. Now imagine this 20-year-old kid, a perfect nerd, worked for the federal government, never did nothing wrong with that, didn't have a traffic ticket, finding out that he's working for drug dealers. Now, we also got to go back to the 70s, right? When, cocaine was not what it is today. It was a society, a status quota. If you had a party and had a lot of cocaine, it was a good party, and now you were dead broke. I mean, a kilo of cocaine was $75,000. You can buy a gorgeous home in Miami for $25,000. So immediately I was like in shock, but it took me about 2 minutes. And that's what happens to us in life, how we are able to process things to justify our ends. I said to myself, well, as long as I'm not breaking the law, I'm an accountant. There was no money laundering law. I said, fine, let them do whatever they can. So they came to me and they said, look, you work for the federal government, do you know how to open foreign bank accounts? And well, I knew how because of an audit that we had at the Federal Reserve Bank. And I said, sure. And they said, well, how much? I had heard that it was between $500 and $700 to open an account. But I didn't want to get involved with none of this. I just wanted to come every Monday, do my accounting, make $1,000, which was a fortune, Back in 76, I was making a big salary at the Federal Reserve Bank, and I made $3.50 an hour. Minimum wage was 85 cents. And I said, $10,000. They looked at me and said, when can you open 3? Literally, my world just changed drastically. All of a sudden, it's like, look, I'm going to figure out how to do this thing. And I did. And I started opening foreign bank accounts for them. No money laundering law. So I thought, no problem with that. So I opened those foreign bank accounts with them. And before you know it, within the first 6 months, I was handling about $50 million a month for these people. Anyway, they began to ask me to handle operations for them in the United States. They're like, you're a clean-cut kid. You're brilliant. You have no one following you. No one would even know anything. You work for the government. And I didn't want to do any of that. I didn't want to get involved. I'm fine. I'm making now $20,000 a month sometimes. So I thought I was the richest man in the world. But they were harassing me. During this time, we had bought the ship, and we had it in California. We were remodeling it. And the guy that I had hired to do the refrigeration, he and I became very good friends because I was living out there. And he was a young guy like me and loved baseball. And I was a big baseball player when I was young. So we started to get real close, and we spent a lot of time together. And then all of a sudden, he started, hey, I know that boat is going to be for cocaine. I'm like, dude, you got to be mine. First of all, why would I buy a ship in my name to smuggle cocaine? Kept harassing me. finally, Roman, when I just couldn't take it anymore, I'm like, okay, I know how to get rid of both sides. I'm going to find out what cocaine costs, and I'm going to make this buyer, so-called wanting to be a buyer, an offer that was so stupid, he's going to tell me, just, that's fine, we can't afford that. And I'm like, you know, I'll do that. I'll just go ahead and tell this Colombian, I said, you know what, I'll handle operations for you, but you make me equal partner, and I ain't got no money to put up, so you got to put it up for me. And I was convinced that if the buyer deal did not work out, this was definitely going to work out, because they're going to look at this 20-year-old kid with braces, and they're going to kick my butt all the way up from Colombia back to the States. So I found out the cocaine was about $35,000 in Miami at that time. And I went up to him and I'm like, look, you're right, Mel. You know, we're drug dealers, but we only handle the best. And it's $70,000 a kilo. He said, oh man, that's high. I said, yeah, I know it's high, but you know, it's 100% pure. And that's, what can I tell you? He said, well, let me talk to my partner. I'm like, I got rid of this guy. So the following week when I had to go to Colombia to give him a report of how the refurbishing of the ship was coming, I went up to Manuel, and he's like, of course, immediately he would bring this up. And when he did, I said, look, I've really been thinking about it. I'll handle all your operations in the United States, make me equal partners, and you guys put up my amount of money to buy the coke. Because at that time, Colombia did not produce any cocaine. They were buying it from Bolivia and Peru. And later on, they started processing it in Colombia, but they didn't. So a kilo of cocaine at that time was 18 to 20,000. So they're bringing in 100 kilos to begin with. So when you look at that and you're like, you know, that's $2 million among 5 people is $400,000. I mean, where the heck am I going to get that amount of money ever in my life? So he said, all right, well, let me think about it. And I'm like, done. I went to my hotel next morning when they were picking me up. The chauffeur said, Manuel wants to talk to you. So I said, okay, we forgot to go over something. So I went back to the office, and there was all his 3 other partners. And literally, I thought I was going to pee myself. I'm like, man, these people got so insulted, they're just going to kill me. You know, they were stoic, no smile, no nothing. And they looked at me and they're like, fine, we'll make you equal partners. You handle all operations. Now, I'm about to turn 21 years old. I've never seen drugs in my life. I don't know what cocaine looks like. I don't know if it looks like sand. What does it look like? How do you bring it in? Who the hell do you sell it to? How do you take it to the seller? What do you do with the money? I mean, literally, I thought I was going to have a seizure. And when I went to Colombia, of course, Mel said, listen, fine, we'll start out with 10 kilos. And I'm like, man, never in my wildest dream did I ever plan for this to happen to my life. Within 6 months, I was handling all operations for that group that became known as the Medellin Drug Cartel. See, there was no Medellin Drug Cartel. I never said this before, a lot of people haven't. It was a name that the Americans gave different groups in the 80s, like Pablo Escobar, to join them together, because if you can put everyone as one common enemy, then it's easier to vilify them. So, but the group, Manuel Garces, who was started, 3 partners myself, we were the group that became known as the Medellin Drug Cartel. And we were importing between 500 to 1,000 kilos in 1977. I was making between $1 million and $3 million a month. And I lived a life that very few human beings ever dreamed of living. I had mansions all over the world. I had private jets, yachts. I went out with the most beautiful women in America. I had anything and anybody that I wanted. But I couldn't understand why suddenly I really started to feel miserable. And I just couldn't understand why my life had no meaning, why I was void and empty. In 1979, we decided that we were going to work. I got approached by the government of Bolivia, and they wanted to sell me directly and not have to go to Colombia. And when I presented the idea to Manuel, he's like, no, those people are savages. You're making so much money. Why would you ever want? And I'm like, look, we can buy for 10 versus 20. We can make $7 million a month versus 1 to 3 per partner. And he's like, don't get greedy. This is fine. But you know what? At that time, I had started to begin to believe I was God. And I didn't care nothing. It was a challenge. So I arranged to make that deal. And we went to Bolivia. As a matter of fact, the guy that you see, if you ever saw him with Scarface, the guy that comes to kill Tony Montana at the end, Roberto Suarez, that was my partner in Bolivia. So I got on the airplane, which I had never gone on before. We flew to Colombia, and I had a meeting in Nicaragua with General Somoza, and I didn't have enough time to get there from a jungle in Panama, in Colombia. So I got on the airplane, and my godfather had a seizure. He's like, you had all the money for us. You're the key to this whole thing. And I'm like, don't worry about it. Nothing's going to happen to me. Well, we crash landed over the jungles of Panama. I was arrested immediately when they gave out my name. The DEA came, we were arrested. The Attorney General came, and I looked at him like, look, don't waste my time or your time. How much money to buy the cocaine back, and how much money to leave Panama? And he's like, well, the cocaine, Noriega already sold it. And to leave Panama is going to be $250,000. I said, I'll give you a number. You call it with this code, and you have your money here the next day. And he did. 2 days later, he comes to see me and like, all right, it's all done. I'm going to arrange for you to go to Costa Rica, which is where we wanted to go. We had paid $1 million to get the president of Costa Rica elected. And he said, they're going to rough you up in the city of Panama a little bit, stick to your story, and don't worry about it. You'll go home that afternoon. So we went there, and they lined us up. It was me, my partner who was in charge of transportation, and the 2 pilots that worked for him. Lined us up. They sat us down in a table in a room about, I don't know, about 7 feet, 8 feet wide by 14, 15 feet long. And they brought this kid, butt naked, couldn't have been no more than 18 years old, maybe weigh 100 pounds, and they handcuffed to his feet and his hands, and they threw him in the floor, and they stuck a broomstick up his rectum, and blood splattered all over the place. When that happened, the pilot said, hey, let me tell you this, Jorge Valdes is the biggest drug dealer in the world. He's lying to you. He doesn't know nothing about the cocaine in the plane. And number 2, he just bribed the Attorney General. And that's when I knew, Roman, that all hell was going to come loose. So they ended up taking us to a dungeon, and they tortured us for the next 28 days, day and night, where I bled every time that I could piss for 5 years. And you know, and the thing about it with me is the thing that I'm most interested about now is talk about mindset. Is I had a mindset at that time, and my mindset was that I'd rather die than cooperate with the government, than testify against people, even most likely the people that I was protecting would testify against me. But like I tell my kids, listen, you walk down the street, they can say anything about your father, loud, obnoxious, whatever. One thing they cannot say is that your father is not a man. And eventually I threatened the guards, because really what I wanted them to do is kill me. Because what I was afraid of was that I was going to lose my mind in this dungeon. And I told Noriega that if he did not kill me, I was going to kill his family. I was going to kill him. And 2 days later he came, and he's like, actually he came smiling. I thought he was going to come shooting. And he was like, why are you threatening me? I didn't rat you out. It was your own pilot. And you made a mistake. You paid the wrong guy. And I'm like, well, how much? He said $250,000. I'm like, dude, $250,000 for 4 the other day. Now it's $250,000 for 2. Fine. Same exercise. And 2 days later, he did take us to the airport. And as we're waiting for the flight for Costa Rica, about 20 Interpol agents came and dragged us like a sack of potato and threw us in an airplane to Miami. When I got to Miami, I was charged with heading the largest drug conspiracy in the history of America. I was given the highest bond in ever. The government wanted $5 million. I was given $2 million. Unheard of. No one has ever been given $100,000 ever in America. And I was sentenced to 15 years. I had just turned 23 years old. And I tell people, you think the prison changed you? Prison doesn't change you. I mean, first time I went to prison, I had a blast. People that were there worked for me, or, you know, I had a lover in there, a woman. I need to clarify that, because in prison that doesn't necessarily equal the opposite gender. But I lived a life, and I got out, and I was just the same way. I was bitter and angry. And, you know, but things started to really ramp up. I remember my mother, you know, I tell people as I work with youth and parents, I said, look, my mother is the best example of tough love. When my mother found out I was a drug dealer, she never stopped telling me that I had destroyed them, that I destroyed their life, that everything they worked for to give us an education, that I was killing her and my dad, and that what I was doing didn't please God. But in the same breath, Roman, she would then say, son, what do you want to eat today? You want black beans? All right, what do you want to eat? So she did waver and told me what was wrong, but didn't stop being my mother. And that's very, very important, because we think tough love is throw their ass out on the streets. See, I knew how to come north, because my parents gave me a true north. So when I went all over the world, all over the place crazy, I knew where to come back. And things began to happen, and eventually what ended up happening was that one day my little girl was, I was partying with some Hollywood celebrities, and in the middle of the night, my ex-wife dropped my daughter off, and in the middle of the night, she was 3 years old, started knocking on the door, and she was like, "Daddy, it's Crystal." And it was the first time in my life that I started to shiver, and I started to feel filthy and disgusting. He was the only thing in my life that was sacred, and she wanted to reach out to her dad, and I couldn't, because if I did, I would contaminate her. So I went in the shower, tried to scrub the shower, I chased everyone out the window of my room, and an hour later, when I thought that she had gone to bed, I on the floor. And that day, it was 1987. I'll never forget, it was April of 87. I made a decision. My life would change. As of today, my life is changing. And I remember I called the head of the cartel. I said, "Look, I'm done." I called my mom, and I'm like, "Mom, I'm finished." She knew exactly what I meant. And she's like, "God answered my prayer." Talking to my father, I'm like, "There's nothing about God here." I was a diehard atheist. It's this has to do with Crystal, not God. And then I hired this guy to come teach me karate, because honestly, I thought that I was going to die within the next 2 months. You know, we didn't have a very good retirement program in the cartel. So I'm like, one of the things that they didn't do very well with was with unknowns. So I know in the back of their mind, they were wondering, like, why is George quitting? He's making $1 million, $2 million a month, $3 million a month. He's doing nothing. Now all he does is give orders. There's no investigation. There's never been a wiretap of him. Why is he quitting? And when you can't answer that question, then their best answer is take him out, you know. And I was convinced of that. So, but I moved to my ranch. I moved away from Miami, which I thought the sun would rise and fall in Miami. And I moved to my ranch, and hired a guy to teach me karate. And the first day he came, like, "I'm going to teach you about the sword." And I was putting on my uniform. I'd done karate when I was young. So excited. I'm like, man, I picked the right guy. Here we're going to start doing, you know, weapons from the beginning. We're not going to have to deal with, you know, throwing kicks and busts. I mean, I picked the greatest guy. And he turns around and he has a Bible in his hand. And I'm like, dude, number one, I don't believe in the book. I believe what that book says. And number two, I'm paying you a lot of money to come teach me karate. So tomorrow, you leave that sword home and bring the real sword. And he was the first man in so many years that got up within 6 inches of my face and said, "Son, what I got to give you, you got no money to pay." And I said to myself, "Well, I reached behind my belt. I didn't have my gun with me." And I'm like, man, this is a guy's 7th-degree black belt. He's going to begin to introduce Jesus into me, and I'm going to pay for it. So I said, "Dude, here's the deal. Waste your time. You know, whenever you, after the 2 hours of karate lesson, when the steam room is heating up, do whatever you want." And people always ask me, "Well, what did he say that would change your life?" I said, really, absolutely nothing. And this was really important about my story. I said, because here's a guy that I look back, never invited me to church, never told me to convert, never told me that I had to be like him. All he did is show me a guy that I thought lived in a very little crappy world, right? He lived in a regular 1,000-square-foot house. I lived in a 20,000-foot mansion. I live in a $15, $20 million ranch. He had an old beat-up car. I had $1 million worth of cars. You know, he was married to the same women for 25 years, and I'm going out with supermodels, and I can't stand them. And I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't stand how can someone be happy with so little in life. And he witnessed to me for 3 years and didn't waver one time. And I was like, I wanted to catch him so bad. I wanted to make believe he was a fall. This is what I tell people. You know, nobody has a problem with Jesus. People just have a problem with Christians. And in prison, it was, for me, it was like, okay, so who's the Christian here? You Baptists said that the Pentecostals are dead because they're going to hell because they dance. Pentecostals said, you guys are already dead because you don't believe in nothing. And the only thing you guys can agree is that Catholics are the whore of the apocalypse. So I don't want to be like you guys. You know, I'm honest. I give my life for my friend, and I fear nothing. And you guys fear everything. And when people say, you know, what is your message today? One of the missions for me is, you know, I don't try to convert anyone. I'm not an evangelist or anything like that. That's none of my business. And I don't care if a person is Jewish, Muslim, you know, gay, not gay, trans, whatever they are. I said, all I do is share my story. How I fell in love with nothing but a Jewish carpenter. It changed my life. And his love changed my life. That's my whole story in a nutshell. So I went back to, you know, three months later, after, 3 years later, it had been already 4 years since I left the cartel. One day, I was arrested. And I had no idea. I was at a horse show. I've been legitimate for 4.5 years. And I had no clue what was going on. And then I found out that I had an indictment in Alabama where I'd never been to my entire life. And I was arrested in St. Louis. And so when they took me there, my attorney was waiting for me. He's like, don't worry about it. You're going to get out of here. They have no case against you. They only have one witness. And he died last night. There's one pilot. He said, well, he was a government witness. He was smuggling cocaine in a DEA airplane and killed himself in the fog. And I looked at him, Roman, I'm like, you know what, Alan? I just can't go on the way that I'm going. I just got to come clean. I got to change my life. And this is my only chance in life. I can't keep fighting these people all my life. I can't lie all my life. I just got to come clean. I got to come clean with my kids, my parents. I got to come clean with the world. And, you know, take whatever consequences come. He said, well, if you do, you're going to spend the rest of your life in jail. And I'm like, it is what it is. So I went in front of the U.S. attorney and they said, look, lots of money, little time, little money, lots of time. I said, do you know how much money I got? And she said, no, but I know who does. And she got up, opened the door, and here come these 4 agents. They knew how much toilet paper I spent. They had spent it with the DEA, FBI, Customs, and IRS. And they had spent years following me, tracking all of my expenses. And at the end of the day, they wanted everything I had. And I just couldn't care less, man. I mean, the anguish that I was living every day of my life, all you live for in life is that when you reach this pinnacle, this mountaintop, and there's your identity, there's your joy, and it's not there, then I live in turmoil. And in some of the people, very high net worth people that I coach, and they're the same way. They have everything, the world applauds them, the world thinks that they're not suffering, but we're all struggling, man. Every single one of them is going through something in life. And now during this period, even worse yet, there's people out there that are going hungry. There's mothers trying to figure out, listen, if I could work, I can't even leave the house because I got 2 little kids, you know? So how do I feed my family? You know, some people say, take care of your health. You know, the health is more important than the economy. Well, for no problem. Oh, be quarantined 30 days. Man, I spent 10 years quarantined in a 3x8 without a woman, without Netflix, so I couldn't care less. No one's taking my house, my refrigerator is full. But for some people, the economy is their life. Some people are not trying to figure out when they're gonna get out to go to beauty salon. They just wanna eat. And that's what we gotta look at this world. We're living in fear and nobody's telling anybody anything because we only tell each other, if I meet you, I'm going to let you meet the Jorge Valdes I want you to meet. If I meet someone else, I'll let them meet a Dr. Valdes I want them to meet. And we go through life like that, and nobody's transparent. So what happens is, if you're not going to share that with me. Why? Because if you do, we fear that we will be judged, and then we fear that once we're judged, we're going to be condemned. So we live in this plastic false world. We do this with our kids. We do this with our spouses. We do this with our friends. And nobody finds healing. And we live in this desperation. Well, in prison, I said, I have 2 things I can do. I can do the time, or I can let the time do me. Prisoners say, sleep 12 hours, and you will sleep half of your sentence away. So I'm like, no, I'm going to make believe I'm a monk. I'm in a monastery, and I want to learn about this God. I want to learn about theology. I want to be the best theologian in the world. And I got another bachelor's, and then I started my master. When I got out, I finished my Ph.D. from Loyola University in Chicago. I was one of 5 Hispanics in the whole country with a Ph.D. versus 5,000 Anglos, recruited by every major university. And then my father died. And when my father died, I was very convicted that he had no money to ever give me. So what did he do, though? He gave me his presence. And I had 3 children from a prior marriage that lived in Georgia. I was living in Chicago. And I just told my wife, we're moving. And so we moved to Georgia to be a full-time dad to my kids. Now, how am I going to work? What am I going to do? Well, I don't care. I can clean toilets. It doesn't matter I have a PhD in my office. All that matters is I got to feed my family. And then we started a company in the basement of our house, a cleaning company. In 10 years, I built it into a multi-million-dollar international and national company. Then one day I said, if a man cannot define when enough is enough, only greed will drive him. And I quit. Moved to Mexico so my kids can learn a different experience, learn a different worldview. And then I've dedicated the rest of my life to try to make a difference in the world. I believe I can change the world. I believe any of us can change the world. You're changing the world through your podcast and what you do. If you give hope to one person, if you make one person's life better, you've changed the world, right? We don't think this monumental thing, or we tell ourselves, well, who am I? I'm just a little guy. Well, Mother Teresa was a nobody nun in a nowhere land and changed the world. The biggest movements in life have been done by one person who could believe that, they could do extraordinary things. So I write books, I coach people. Now, because of this virus, I decided that I was going to write this, what I call the Narco Mindset Journal. People say, why don't you have any fear? I said, well, what is there to fear? I said, I've fallen off an airplane at 3,000 feet and I lived. I've been shut up 28 times and I lived. I spent 10 years in prison. I lived. I was tortured and I lived. A virus is going to take me? Well, that'd be a hell of a joke. So at the end of the day, the fear is fear itself. So I want to help people to change their mind, because it's all about mindset, right? It's all about how do we look at the world, through what lenses. When people say, well, I see this, I see that. Well, how do you see things different? I said, because it's like this. If you take a cowboy and you take a preacher and you take an artist and they stand on the top of the Grand Canyon and they look down, and the artist says, wow, if I could transport this to my canvas, I'm going to have a masterpiece. The preacher said, what a great God I serve, there is this beauty. I was looking at this and man, it'd be hell to get my freaking cows from down there. They're all looking at the same thing, coming up with 3 different things, right? So I look at the world through what I call my narco mindset, right? The mindset that I can overcome anything. I can become anything. My past, has consequences, rightfully so, deservedly so, but they don't define me. My failures don't define me. I don't look at things as a failure. To me, they're all learning lessons, right? How did I know if I would have made another decision, it would have been better? I don't know that. All I know is what I have now. So I look at, and at the end of the day, to me, what's important is when the pages of history are written, will history remember my name? And I just believe that history only remembers our name, but the lives that we impact, the lives for others that we impact. It doesn't remember us by these great buildings or making millions and millions. I was making more money any human being can ever imagine. Think about 21 years old, you're making $1 million, $3 million a month in 1966, 76, 77, when you can buy a Corvette for $15,000. And I don't make nothing now. I live a very good life, thank God. But in comparison, I live a pauper. But it doesn't matter, because to me, the wealthiest is the person that has the least, that needs the least, not the one that has the most. If you see some of the high net worth people, and I also coach very high profile athletes, and you hear the stories inside, man, these people, the world applauds them. They all want to be them. They're miserable. They have family problems. And they're disconnected from their children. Their marriages, they work so hard because they don't want to come home. Well, we don't have to remain like that. We don't have to allow our circumstances to define us forever. We have the power to change. So that was my story in a nutshell.
Yeah, there's a lot to unwrap there. And I think starting off, when everybody's younger, at least for myself, in my 20s, the motivator there was kind of money, title, position, material things. I think it's a developing mind. Oftentimes you get kind of lured by that And I think a lot of people in your situation would have obviously kind of took advantage of that opportunity and ran with it. And obviously you kind of justified it that, you know, you weren't money laundering, you were just handling their books to begin with. And then it kind of spiraled out of control. And I think it's important you had your kind of guiding light to get you out of that. And then the whole, you know, you finding God, I think made a good point about all these religions. And I think personally, you know, religion doesn't save, you know, having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, at least for me. So there's all these religion things that kind of push people away from God, but having a personal relationship with him, obviously, is the most important thing. And then doing so in terms of using your time. You were incarcerated, and instead of just kind of letting that time compound and move on, you basically took advantage of the situation, did something with it, found an education, and redefined your life that way. And I think it's very important in terms of having a platform and then leaving a legacy, because as you said, you know, physical and material things are great. You know, those accolades come with success. But at the end of the day, how many things can you actually have without actually impacting others? I think us being in people's memories and impacting their lives and making their lives better is what kind of carries us on after we're gone as well.
No, and you know, you said something interesting, and I'll give you an example. Here's the amazing thing. This is what I shared with people. I said, you know, I remember the day exactly to the hour. Okay, September. It was July the 1st, 1990, 11 o'clock in the morning. And like I said, this guy that witnessed through me about when I kept asking him, Tim, why are you so happy, man? What's wrong with you? And I'm saying to myself, this guy's on drugs. All he ever said to me, Roman, was, I have a personal, intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. And I'm like, dude, you're crazy. How do you know that? You don't know. You can't see this guy. I said, I see all these people around me, and I have no relationship with them. And this is what I tell people that was interesting with me, was when my little divorce was final from my daughter, from our ex-wife, and she's dragging my daughter out of our ranch. And that was my whole life. The only thing that meant anything in my life. I went to my room and I got on my knees, and I'm going to tell verbatim what I said, 11 o'clock in the morning, July 1st, 1990. I said, God, first of all, I want to tell you something. I don't believe you're real. That's first. Because, you know, you got to be real. And I believe I serve a big God. And I said, that's number one. I said, number two, if you are real, you're looking at me and say, man, George, you're so freaking bad. You stay down there. I don't want you up here. I said, number three, but if you are real, change my life. If you change my life, I'll die for you. And if you don't, I'll spend the rest of my life telling people you're a fraud. And people think that when we convert or when we have a religious experience, our life just gets better, right? Because a lot of people try to bargain with God. And whoever's God it is, for you and I, is Jesus Christ. But whoever, let it be Muhammad, Buddha, whatever. And you can do that. My world went from bad, Roman, to horrifically bad in 3 months. Well, I'm going to tell you, I went from being a multimillionaire since I was 20 to not having a dollar. All this happened in 1 week. To not having a dollar to go home and find out that my father, my hero, my idol, had just been diagnosed with cancer, had a year left to live. And my ex-wife took off for 2.5 years with my daughter. And I go into the cell when the judge looked at me and said, I reject any plea agreement you reach with the government. It's my intention to sentence you to a life sentence. You will die in a federal prison. I said, Your Honor, with all due respect, you can only give me what God wants to give me. And the truth of the matter is, if he doesn't change my life, I don't give a damn where I die. I have been dead for years. So this is my only chance. And then I pled guilty. I forfeited over $50 million with no agreement or nothing. The only thing that I was banking on, or that my attorney asked, listen, sentence him under the law when he committed his crime. See, when I committed my crime, the most the government could give me is 15 years, right? That's the most. But the law changed at the end of 87. That 15 years now was 3 life sentences. Well, the people that I had dealt with, that I walked away from, kept going. And when they got arrested, technically, I could be sentenced under that same law, which would be 3 life sentences versus 15. But since they never caught me with nothing, since they never had a witness, and I confessed, all that we were hoping was that I get charged with the violation of the parole, the 10 years I had left for my first sentence. And my world went dark, but I remember walking into this cell, Mobile, Alabama. And I'm laying there on this steel bunk bed, and it had been 36 hours that I've been on the road from St. Louis all the way to Mobile, from prison to prison. And it just seemed like every time they moved me to a new prison, I missed a dinner or a lunch or a breakfast. And I finally got to Mobile after I left the court, and I hear this guy say, Milky Way, Milky Way. And I look around, and this guy said, man, they got Milky Way. We only get that like every 2 months. And he said, they're only $1. And Roman, I said to myself, my God, 2 hours earlier, I was worth $60 million, and I don't have a freaking dollar to buy a Milky Way now. And I'm laying in my bed, and this little pocket sheet out of a pocket Bible, Hebrews, falls on my chest, and it says, rejoice at the confiscation of your goods, because you got greater riches in heaven. And it was so crazy. And, you know, and like I tell people, our faith and our evolution and how we change for the better, it's a process. And it's not an overnight process. Listen, it was 1990 since I gave my life to Christ. So you're talking about 30 some odd years now. And exactly 30 years. And it's changing every day. And we struggle and we fall. But there is forgiveness, you know, and there's faith. And they're like, well, how come you have such strong faith? I said, because I have seen things in my life that have happened, answers to prayers. And at the end of the day, I said, what's most important of all is, here's a guy that the news media used to say, I ran through my pain. And I said, falling in love with this imaginary character you all want to call whatever it is, changed my life to the point that I never used to cry. When I was tortured, since the day I left Havana, Cuba at the age of 10, I did not shed one more tear, ever, until I became a Christian again. And my kids said, now, man, now you cry over everything. I said, yeah, because the thing about that was so critical in my transformation with Jesus was that his love broke my hardened heart and gave me a new heart. And I said, look, people have problems with Christians, and rightfully so, because, you know, sadly enough, the worst propaganda we give to Christ or to any faith is those of us that call themselves, or those that call themselves Christian and live anything but a Christian life, right? No love, no evidence, no nothing. I said, look, no one has a problem with Jesus, and no one has a problem with his love. I said, so that's my story. If I like to tell people when I do events, I said, look, if the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, then just buy another pair of shoes. And but the truth of the matter is that I gave my you know, turned my life around blindly, man. I mean, think about it. There was no promises of nothing. I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to bury my children. And one day my children are gonna come and pick up my body from a prison. But my pain and my hope of being transformed was so deep and so enormous that this was my only chance. So I told a friend of mine the other day, I said, look, man, if nothing else, if you're a gambler, just give it a shot. But don't play. You know, don't play and don't like, okay, I'm going to become a Christian today because the good things are going to happen to me. Yes, you know. Listen, it's a struggle, it's a war out there. I have no fear because, and I'm not, and I'm really careful how I say this, because as we're going through this virus, I'm not one that says that God brought this virus amongst us, right? Because that would be painful to say. But for me, for Jorge Valdes, I just believe that nothing that happens in my life is either ordained by him or permitted by him. So if he permits something in my life, what is it for? What do I have to learn? You know, where are we at as a world? You know, I thought one of the best things this virus would bring is that it would take this hatred that we have shown in America, where suddenly, man, whether you like the president or not, man, families didn't speak to each other anymore. You know, our children were so far from wanting anything to do with religion, with Christ, with the church, with anything. And like I told people, look, I've never met an atheist in a trench hole. It just doesn't exist. I said, but I have this tremendous peace because, number one, I believe, for me, for Jorge Valdes, If I die, I'm going to be with Christ. And if I live, I'm going to live with him. So what do I got to lose? I thought I was going to die at 24 when I had no faith. At 30 when I had no faith. I never thought I'd make it past 30. I'm 64, man. I'm like way past all time. So, you know, it's this is a time for us to really think hard about our lives. Did we ever imagine the whole world was shut down? And to look at, take the focus away from us. Like I tell people, why don't you play cards? You know, the first luxury we had in America after 3 years was not a car or a TV or record player, it was a Monopoly board. And we played Monopoly board. We're poor, but you know what? We were happy, man. We were together as a family. And all of a sudden, I have money you can never imagine, and nothing in my life meant anything. And I'm like, I adore my mother, tremendous respect for her, but I hate old women. You know, I couldn't care less if someone dies or not. Yeah, I got $20,000, $30,000 every Friday out of my excess. But if that Friday meant that $30,000 was going to keep me from buying fuel for my jet, well, the poor had to stay poor. Well, now if I got 2 pairs of shoes and someone needs it, I give one. When I built my company, I dedicated my company to God, day one. And I said, I'm going to give 10% of everything that we made. And we did. And we created a foundation that's done tremendous things to help kids get off drugs. So, you know, and when we had the foundation, I did a big seminar and people said, well, you know, it's hard to start a foundation. I said, well, how about you say, okay, can you afford $500 to give away once a year? Yes. And this was a good friend of mine who was African American. I said, why don't you offer a $500 scholarship for books to African American kids at some university? I said, that will transform their lives. And it's nothing. It just means don't bring Starbucks for 100 days, for 3 months. So there's so much that we can do in the world if we just take the focus away from us, and if we focus on others and the needs of others, and realize that, listen, we can make a difference. We just didn't come here to, I mean, what kind of a joke? I mean, we're such a perfect creation. What do? Come here to live, suffer, and die? You know, there's greater meaning to life. We have a greater purpose. There's a lot of hurting people out there. We can reach out to people and say, hey, I'm here. You know, the title of my first book, Coming Clean. You know, share with people your pain, your struggle. Share that with your kids so they realize that, hey, when they struggle, they can come and share with you. When I decided to do this journal called Narco Mindset Journal, I'm almost done with it. You know, I looked at life and I looked at how do we change our mind? How do we change our mindset so that instead of fear, we live in power? And, you know, instead of being greedy, we're generous. Instead of being selfish, we care about others. You know, how do we transform mind so that when whatever challenge comes in life, you will overcome it? You know, and that's, I write every day. I do my YouTube channel, and there's going to be a big major streaming series about my life coming this fall. And that's the story of my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, like, going back to the whole religion thing, I think a lot of people, like you said, either get saved and then are kind of shown a direction where it's kind of like the prosperity doctrine, where, like, you know, you accept God and then everything is going to be, like you said, is all okay. And most times everything's going to collapse around you and you have to kind of figure it out. But I think God doesn't give you anything that you can't handle. And then you got to kind of get past that. But then it's also kind of your background. So I was born in Ukraine under the Soviet Union. So when I came here, I saw all that, you know, standing in bread lines with my mom for like 5 hours, hot water being shut off. So I think coming to the US in terms of like the capitalistic economy, and anyone can do technically anything if they have the drive to do so, I think different tough times prepare you a lot better, give you that kind of additional grit. And then last recession, 2008, I got into what I do now, what I've been doing for 11 years, and I took advantage in the opportunity of that economy. So I think it's important that way. And focusing on that legacy, like you said, mindset has exponentially increased my business and my brand by just simply helping others and not expecting anything in return.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing about it. Like I tell you, you cannot give God. You know, I'll give you a perfect example. And so we had a company. a large disaster restoration company, and we did major catastrophes. And we're doing one in Louisiana, and yeah, we've been there 3 months, and our company was part of the cleanup of the Pentagon, so we became very, very large. And we were there 3 months, and we're about to leave. We're about to leave, and we had done really well. And I'm sitting there paying checks to all our vendors, and I'm literally living inside a penitentiary at Angola, which is a tremendous story about, if you want to read about the bloodiest prison in the history of America. How one man, and I'd love for him to be on your podcast because you'll love him, how one man came in there and turned the prison where there was a stabbing every day, murder every day, and turned it for Christ and became the safest prison in America. Unbelievable. But I'm there in this motorhome, and then I get this inkling, and it's like, write a check for $150,000. And what happened, there was a church inside the prison, and the hurricane had destroyed the church, but the prison thought that it belonged to the church, so they couldn't do nothing. But the church thought, well, it's inside, belongs to the prison, we're not going to pay for it. So nobody was going to pay for nothing, and it was devastated. And it was a church built in the 1950s. And I'm like, how many people found hope? How many people found, peace for their life in this little bitty church? So I went in and I gave it to Warren and I said, look, I don't know why I'm doing this because it's not more than we're going to be making, but I just feel like God's telling me to give this to you. And I did. And the year after that, we made millions. And before we ever counted out, we took 10%, and we created that foundation, President Miles Foundation, and we've done things around the world to help. And at the end of the day, what people don't realize is if you make $1 or $1 million, you know what? You live the same, man. The only difference is you just got more stuff. But it doesn't add any more meaning to your life, like you appreciate this. I'm telling a friend of mine today because my son, of course, very, very good kid and a great filmmaker. And he's like, well, Dad, we have to, you need to stay home and all that. And I said, my friend, I said, my son sees that because he's never been hungry. He's always had a good refrigerator. He lives in a gorgeous home. He lives in a golf course. He doesn't know what it is to be in a bread line. He doesn't know what it is about 5 o'clock in the morning to deliver newspaper so you can buy rice. Forget about anything else. Our meal at night was rice and beans. My father had been a millionaire making 80 cents an hour working for JCPenney as a janitor. And he's got 2 boys, 10 and 9, helping so we can buy rice and beans and maybe once a week buy some meat, ground beef or whatever. We ate cat food, not thinking that it was cat food. We just thought it was spam or something, And at the end of the day, you realize that unfortunately, most people today in America have no clue about that and have no clue about how many people are hurting. We don't have a middle class anymore. If you think 80% of America has $400 in savings, my God, it's like, what has happened to are we really the richest country in the world? Or people say, hey, look, like communism, very few own all the money. I said, well, what has happened in America now? Very few own all the money. A lot of people are hurting. And this is the reset. People say, well, the world's going to change. I said, no. The world has changed. The world has drastically changed. And we adapt, right? Because you know how to adapt. Because you came from Ukraine. You had your life with your family and your friends and your neighbors and your relatives. And so you came to the United States and you wonder, like, is this better? We're on a food line. We're going hungry. You can see mom and dad desperate. They probably didn't speak the language. My dad, a guy that had been a millionaire all his life, didn't speak English. I mean, life was very, very difficult. The immigrant journey is a very difficult journey. I tell people, listen, I am pro-life, but I'm pro-all life. I'm pro that immigrant woman in the border. I'm pro that drug addict. We're not even taking into consideration the problem we're going to have in America with mental health that nobody wants to talk about. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about the fact that this year, because of this virus, probably 2 to 3 times as many people will commit suicide versus what the virus is going to take. And we're all panic about the virus. Listen, it doesn't mean that I'm an idiot. And if the government tell me, hey, stay 6 feet away, wash my hands, cover your face, I'll do that, right? Because I'm an obedient citizen, I believe that I'm supposed to be. But I don't go out there in fear. I'm going to die the day God wants to take me home. And I'm not going to let the media, and I've been talking a lot about this, scare the hell out of me. And when I see those people that make Roman all that money, when I see them writing out checks to feed poor people, I'll listen to what they got to say. Don't tell me how many people are dying. Tell me how many people are recuperating. Tell me what are the conditions of the people that are dying. I have a brain. Don't scare me. Don't scare me. We will get through this. We will get through everything. And you're right. I believe without a doubt, God will not give us any more than we can handle. We call ourselves a Christian nation, but we need to ask ourselves, are we living up to that title? Or is it just a title? Prosperity gospel, perfect example. So, I'm sure God wants to bless you, but it's his choice. What if he doesn't? What if he wants you to live in misery for me? I'm fine, right? Because all I care about is doing his will, And it's not about that we gamble with God. I tell people, the only time you got to gamble with God is if you're a gambler, is give your life to him. If you lose, if he's not real, you lost nothing. If he is, you gain eternity. And that's what I tell, we deal a lot with prison. One of our mission is we send books to prisoners all over the United States, because that's another thing that's the worst. The war on drug is the biggest joke in America. It is the worst scam society, and the whole criminal reform, the criminal justice system is skewed. It's made to go after those that can defend themselves, because they don't care about rehabilitating people. It's all about bodies, right? It's all about big money. Pharma. We spend millions of dollars on the drug war to do what? To do what? Cocaine is 10% of the death in America. Why don't we spend half of that to go up to 65%, which is big pharma? You're not going to win the war on drugs. Listen, Pablo Escobar, I heard it over and over again. I remember when Pablo, nobody, when he was a chauffeur for Manuel. You kill Pablo Escobar, nothing happened. Another one worse come. You like up El Chapo, another one worse come. You're not going to stop it, ever, ever. So if you're not going to stop it, doesn't mean that we give up on law enforcement, right? I believe in law enforcement. I believe that if you commit a crime, you need to pay for your crime. So I believe in justice, but it has to fit the crime. You want to talk about, look at all the drug dealers in South America. I said, well, let me go back and tell you something that I know because I lived it. So the banana companies in America would go to the Colombian banana growers and give them enough, Roman, for them to starve. And 3/4 of the season, they're like, we don't need no more bananas. And they're like, what do we do? Burn them. Because they didn't even have a road to take it to the big city, right? So let's say they were giving them $100 an acre. So here we come in, the devil, right? And we said, okay, I'm going to give you $2,000 an acre. I'm going to build you a school. I'm going to build you a hospital. And we'll build you roads so that whatever bananas you grow, you can take them and sell them in the city. To them people, who was God? So you want to stop drug trafficking in America? Quit exploiting your international company. Quit exploiting those workers down there. Same thing in the United States. Help this kid. Nobody wants to become a drug trafficker. Nobody wants to break the law. When people come out of prison and they say, oh, jailhouse conversion is a lie. No, it's not a lie. It's very real. It's not easy to become a Christian in prison. You're chastised. But what happens? I come out of prison. I've given my life to God. And nobody in the church wants to receive me, right? Nobody wants to hire me. Nobody wants anything to do with me. What am I going to do? I got to eat, right? I got a big label in the back that says convicted felon, don't hire me. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do what I know how to do to survive. It's called survival. So there's a lot that we can do to change this. We can quit spending trillions of dollars fighting these insensible wars and spend that helping our youth to find options to their life. Dealing with mental health, it is real. It is not a label. It is not a concept. It is real. There's people dying of mental health here in America. People getting arrested for drugs, they're not criminals. Allow them. They're addicts. An addict is not a criminal. He's just a person suffering from mental health. So there's just so much that we can do. And at the end of the day, I just pray. I get up in the morning, I pray. I go to bed at night, I pray. And I just pray that was all said and done. I've done the best that I humanly can with whatever he has given me. And that's for me. I don't tell people, listen, I'm not telling you, give your life to Christ, everything's going to be fine for you, all your problems are going to go away, your wife is coming back, your kids are getting off drugs. No, I can't say that. I have no clue what the heck is going to happen with you. All I can tell you is what happened with me, right? And all you can say is what has happened to you. And if it's attractive, you know, if we are, I tell people say, well, how can you believe in God? I said, well, look, so here's the deal. I knew Chuck Colson, right? You know, I know Chuck Colson from Watergate. He was Nixon's lawyer. And he became a Christian, wrote a book called Born Again. But he said the best thing I ever heard him say is this. He said, I know the resurrection was true because the 12 most powerful men in the world were not able to keep alive for 3 weeks in Watergate, and 12 nobodies in the Middle East were thrown to lions, were eaten, were beaten, their children set on fire because they believe in the resurrected Christ. So he says, I know that's when it's true, and that's the biggest thing for me, you know. And I failed also, and to be real is like, listen, it's not all roses, man. I got to stay on my knees every day because I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. But I try every day to be a little better, to be a little better husband, a little better father, a little better friend, a little better Christian, you know. And at the end of the day, I just pray that when people see me, say, hey, there's something different about him, you know. But if people, like I tell people, if you're in the office and everyone's joking and telling nasty jokes and cursing and all that, and they don't care about saying it in front of you, then maybe you need to find out what's going on, because we're supposed to live up for a different standard, you know, not judging anybody, loving people, you know.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously it's an ever-changing journey. And just like you said, just because you become a Christian doesn't mean you're not going to fall or do the wrong things, but kind of picking yourself up from that as well. So what's one thing you can leave with the audience in terms of advice?
You know, the main thing that as far as advice that I can give the audience is, when you look at something in life, ask yourself through what lenses you're looking at it. And your lenses, you're going to look at things through the lenses of your life experiences. But just realize that we get knocked down many, many times in life, and that will never define you. You have hope in life. You have redemption in life. There is a better way. And that better way doesn't necessarily mean more money, because I found joy in a prison cell thinking I was going to lie there for the rest of my life. So don't let your failures, or what you consider your failure, even call them failures. Change your mindset. You know, give importance to what's really, really important in life. Your children, they don't need more things. They need you. You know, spend time with your family. That's the most important thing. Like I tell people, don't come to my funeral to give me. I'm not there. You want to give me love? Give it to me while I'm alive. You know, call your friends. Let's not be so distant in the world that we're living in. And for those that are seeking meaning to their life, or believe in God, or their faith is weak, what I can tell them is this: if God could change the heart of Jorge Valdes, he can change any human being's heart, because I was the most hardened human being in the world. I was not a person that did not believe in God. I was a adamant advocate atheist. I not only did not believe in God, I was against anybody and everybody that believed in God. And the greatest thing I say about that is that when God changed me, he did not wait for me to change. He changed me at my worst. God loved me when I was a sinner. And to a lot of people, it might not mean nothing, Roman, but to me, the day that verse, my master was in the Gospel of John. And the day that, and I read it 100 times. And the day that verse became real to me, I love you when you were a sinner. And I sat there and I thought about all the horrific things I had done in my life, all the death I had seen, pornography, etc., etc. And I'm like, you could love me then? You know? So look at your brothers and look at people. Don't let politics divide us. Love people. Love changes lives. Love changes hearts. And if you don't have a relationship with God, or you don't, or you feel like your life has no meaning, give it a shot. He'll take you and meet you right where you're at. And at the end of the day, when all this will pass. This virus will pass. There will be other challenges that will also pass. And more important is this. My PhD was in the apocalypse of St. John. People say, when do you think Jesus is coming back? I said, I don't give a damn. And they're like, oh, you're a Christian? I said, well, it's simple for me. I've been coming back forever, still not here. What's important for me is that in my lifetime, I'm going to see him. So I'm not worried if he's going to come 120 years from now. All I'm worried about is how am I going to be that day when I come and see him. Our days here are a gift. We can be here today. If the virus shown you anything to anybody is, our life is just but a fleeting moment. There's more to life. There's got to be more to our creation, Roman, than living 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years in a fallen and broken world. There is more. And I believe that when I die, whenever that day comes, I fear not. And it will be glorious for me. So my mission in life, impact the world, and work my butt off to get my children to come to heaven with me. And that's what I live for.
That's awesome and a really powerful story and journey. And I really appreciate your stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you or anything else you have going on?
Yes. If one of the ways is if you go to my webpage at www.jorgevaldez.com and you join our community, you get a free copy of my latest book. If you go to Narco Mindset Journal, you can see what I'm doing with the journal. And you can follow me in my YouTube. I don't make money off of this. All I do is every penny that we get, every book that we sell to Amazon, I got 12 books published. Every penny goes to books to prisoners, to give them hope, to give them redemption, to give them a feeling that people care about them, especially in their times of loneliness. So, but follow us because I'm writing a lot of stuff. There's going to be a lot of things in the, like I said, in the big major streaming services about my life soon. I've waited many, many years because I wanted the story to be told right. And I recently joined with a studio called Rack on Tour. The Cocaine Cowboys, two great guys, and we got some amazing projects, amazing works. And this is before Pablo Escobar was there. I was there before he ever made $1. I was making millions. So that we're telling stories that never have been told before. And at the end of the day, we're doing it all with one purpose and one meaning is, and that's what I tell. Every drug story that you see, Roman, a poor kid leaves school, does horrific crimes, and ends up in jail or dead. Well, I did this. I was a poor kid. I didn't leave school. I had a college degree, but I did get a life of crime. I did go to prison, but God redeemed me. And I found redemption, and He reinvented me. I have a Ph.D. now. I'm respected. I speak all over the world. And my whole mission is to give people a message of hope and redemption, that there is hope for us. There's tremendous hope. Take your eyes off this virus and say, what is, if you don't believe this God, what is nature trying to teach you? Because it's trying to tell us something, right? And so you follow me, there's just a lot of stuff publishing on a daily basis. We're making videos constantly, and they're all to give people positive messages of hope and redemption. And at the same time, a lot of them are entertaining. We're telling stories that have never ever been told before. So Jorge Valdes with an S, Ph.D.com, and the journal is narcomindsetjournal.com.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by.
My pleasure, my brother. I'd love to send you a copy of my book.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Text me your address and I'll be more than happy to. It's been a pleasure being with you.
You too. Bye-bye.